New season, new set, new styling, new soundtrack, new show-stopping guests. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The show's about to begin. Lynnette, let's put on a show. Kicking off season 4 strong with Lynnette Sacchetto, the data queen of Dubai. Not only that, my next guest has over 20 years experience in real estate. She is an authority and trusted voice in Dubai's real estate market, advisor to governments, developers, financial institutions, and the private sector in the Middle East, a pioneer of prop tech and big data in Dubai, Women Leader of the Year in prop tech, MENA's top 10 real estate consultants power list, and Harvard alumni. Welcome to the show, Lynnette.
Thank you, Silvia. What an intro. Thank you. I'm honored to be here, honestly.
Okay, now, if you're a subscriber, you know that most of my guests typically don't need any introduction, but I do say, this is such and such of such and such. And that's been a question that is hot on everybody's lips, is yes. What is Lynnette up to these days? So can you spill the tea for us, please?
All right, so the big tea to spill today is that I'm a founder of RealTrust Conveyancing and Escrow Services, which is a digital conveyancing and escrow service company here in the U.A.E.
She's letting the cat out of the bag exclusively on the Golden Nugget Show. So thank you for that. I always love being the deliverer of the dealer and distributor of real estate tea. So, okay, we are going to go into more detail. You're going to have to explain it to me exactly what you're doing, the problems that you're solving for. But before we go into that, I would like to know, there is something else. There is some other tea in the market that you've observed from the data.
Yes. So obviously, I constantly track the data. That is part of what I do. And I've been seeing some key indicators since last year in the market and some transitions. Obviously, I look at various different data sets, not just Dubai Land Department data, but also listing data, as well as mortgage data. I use Readin, which is a real estate data platform for all of the data. And it's very interesting to see how the market is shifting. And I'm not hearing about it in the market from others. So I'm not sure if others are seeing the same thing that I am seeing. But the indicators are strong. They are there. Today, I put out on my Instagram an easy one. So let's start there.
Okay.
So mortgage stat for this year is about half of the real estate sales transactions in the secondary market have been mortgaged. Now, this is actually a strong indicator. This is a positive sign in the market. It is actually showing that the residents, the end users, are starting to buy again in the Dubai real estate market.
Instead of the cash buyers.
The foreign investors, the cash buyers, the very clear, since COVID, we had the Russian and the ex-Soviet state investors in the market who have exited. That's one indicator as well. But what we're seeing today is that residents and users are starting to buy again. They see the opportunity to buy. Why? Another indicator is that we have gone from a seller's market to a buyer's market. This is the obvious one. I think pretty much everyone has seen this, especially
We're going to need you to slow down on this one. Just say that again, please.
So
we have gone from a
seller's market to a buyer's market.
When did that happen?
So we started to see this trend about the end of last year. I would say about the end of Q3 of last year. And it's been very apparent and very strong this year.
Okay.
I'm sure you've been hearing the buzz on the street that the market is slowing. Luxury sales have decreased significantly. Those are some of the indicators as well. If you look at the listing price data, they have also decreased month on month since Q3 of last year, which is another indicator. So all of these put together is showing signs of where the market is going.
Okay, so kind of the optics at the moment is there's a launch, it sells out. That's the off-plan market. The data that you're looking at is secondary?
No, so
Specific?
I look at, so this specific, what I was just talking about is the secondary market. So we're saying half of the sales in the secondary market are mortgage, which shows that it's residents to end users.
And
But
possibly tenants shifting into home
absolutely,
ownership.
yeah. So these are the residents and users. So the people who have been looking to buy, or the people who are fed up paying the increased rental amounts. Last or Q1, it was a 25% increase in rental prices across the board. So they have been waiting on the sidelines. Obviously, it was very much a seller market last year for that right time to buy, and they are, especially the ones who have been very active in the market. They're saying, okay, now I see prices are starting to decrease in certain areas. There's been certain areas who have been very glutinous because of the past investors from the years before that were very specific in those areas where we're starting to see prices change. So that's very indicative in the secondary market. Now, in the off-plan market, as you were just talking about, now there are also some very interesting indicators there. I don't know if you remember during COVID, we had the post-handover payment plans.
Yeah.
They were massive and they were very alluring. So you had 5-year, 7-year, even 10-year post-handover payment plans by Emaar, in some of the highly sought-after areas in Dubai. Then in 2023, we had zero. So 0 projects that were being sold had post-handover payment plans. This year, 33% of the projects have post-handover payment
But
plans.
shorter ones, like 2 years.
Does
3
it,
years.
regardless, it's still an incentive.
Right.
There's a reason why that incentive is there. It's not because they're selling all the units within a few hours. It's because they have units sitting that they need to sell.
So I'm an agent, let's say. I'm not an agent, but let's say we're talking to the real estate industry. If you were an agency leader or a real estate professional, what would you be advising them to do now? If you're seeing this shift, what would your words of wisdom be?
Obviously, always looking at the data, depending on where the client is looking to buy, there's still a big shift to happen in the market towards the end of this year and next year. So for the clients that are looking to buy, I would tell them honestly to hold off. Hold on, wait to see how the market goes and look at it next year.
Okay, so that's going to be your advice to home buyers.
Correct.
The agents aren't going to be saying that, right?
No.
They need their commission now. So if I'm an agent, what should I be doing?
So as an agent, I would be highly concentrated on the areas where we're seeing the shift to look for those bargain deals, because there are, like I said, some glutinous areas that were overhyped and the prices were accelerated significantly due to the demand in those areas by these buyers who are no longer in the market. So I will be looking for the sellers in these areas who have been on the market for more than 90 days. The days on market, we're also seeing an increase. That's another indicator, and to see who's highly motivated to sell and focus on that. That's if I was an agent, that's what I would be focusing on for my clients.
It sounds like, and again, it's probably quite difficult because a lot of real estate agents have only been in the industry for a couple of years since COVID, let's say. Probably an additional 5,000 real estate professionals entered the Dubai market. They don't know how it feels kind of in a different market.
Correct.
And it sounds like there's some difficult conversations to be had with sellers these days, with the data showing them, having difficult conversations about the price, the listing price reductions. What would your words of wisdom be on having those conversations? Because you've been a seller as well. So how would you best receive that information?
So now that we're just at that pivot point, going from a seller's market to a buyer's market, things don't happen overnight. There's a 4 to 6 month lag in the market here in Dubai. What we're seeing is very predictive analysis type of information that we're talking about today. So as that point is turning, what I would say to the sellers as an agent, if I were an agent, would be sell now at the high price that you have and exit, because 3, 4, 6 months from now, your price is going to be significantly different if you were to sell. That would be, but again, this needs to be backed by data.
I love how she's done that. Significantly different.
Significantly different.
Read between
again,
the lines,
this is
guys.
by area. Some areas you won't have a significant difference, but there will be many areas where you will. But again, it needs to be backed by data. And I am so surprised and shocked by the fact that majority of the agents in the market do not look at the data, nor do they utilize the data when they're speaking to their clients. When I created the B2B data platforms way back in the day for the agents, it was with that in mind, and very few have taken upon themselves to utilize it during COVID, a lot more than before COVID. But you'd be shocked at the amount of the lack of data that goes into market to the consumer, to the end user.
I mean, it is very difficult. If you're a salesperson, it is very difficult to sit there, analyze data, but also translate it. To an agenda that suits you, let's be honest. So you're not going to want to tell your buyers, oh, by the way, prices may come down in this area, because that can affect your profession, your commission.
Really, if you are a good agent, you take the opportunity in the market and you use it to your advantage. I was an agent in the U.S. I was in the top 2% of sales in Las Vegas, where I had my brokerage. And I was there during the very good times, and I was there during the financial crisis. I utilized both to my advantage, and I was the top of my sales during both times. So I don't really buy that philosophy, which I hear a lot in the market. There's opportunity in every single market. You just need to be a good agent and find it and use the data.
So if you were an agent, what would you be looking at on a daily basis? What key indicators?
So daily, what you're looking at is not the data, because data really it's not that dynamic.
Right.
I like to look now at the data quarterly. What I would be doing daily is speaking to the buyers and the sellers.
Okay.
Specifically now in this market, the sellers, to see where they're at, to kind of educate them more, talk about days on market in their area, how many listings are in their area, and just understand the reason why they're looking to sell, and also the motivation of the buyers.
Okay, so I've started getting quite a few non-real estate people listening to the show who are always keen to ask, when's the right time to buy, or get some home buyer tips. So you're a great person to give some home buyer tips. Can you give us some data on, okay, if I'm a seller, what target days on market could I be expecting? And if I've gone past a certain point, because I had the conversation with Sharif from Property Finder, and he said, I think it was like 37 days is the average on market.
Last year.
And then prices start dropping. What is it? What do you see now?
So average days on market last year was 30. Today it's 90.
Okay.
Again, another indicator of where the market's going.
Right.
So what I would tell the seller is to price if you're motivated. Some sellers are not. Some sellers are willing to just sit there and wait out the market. But if you're motivated to sell, price it correctly to sell according to the data. And the agent's responsibility is to be speaking to the buyers to see their motivation as well within those areas.
Okay. So I'm a seller. I would do my own research. I would look at the listing platforms and see, there's something on the market for, let's say, 3 million, identical to my unit. And I would look at the sold data, and I would see, that they're selling for 2.8, for example. Last one sold a couple of weeks ago at 2.8. What would your advice be to me? What price I should be listing at? There's listings for 3 million. I can see that they're selling, or they've been selling for 2.8. What price should I go on the market for?
If you're a motivated seller and you're seeing that it's been selling for 2.8, I would put it at 2.8 and be negotiable.
Okay. All right.
Knowing that it will go under 2.8.
Okay. So we're seeing a slight dip. Okay. Noted. Now, you tapped into Vegas. You were a broker in Vegas. Was that the beginning of your...
Broker owner.
Broker owner?
Yeah.
The beginning of your real estate career?
No. So I bought my first property at 18. So I would call myself a serial real estate investor. I love real estate, loved it since I was a child. I, as a hobby.
Oh, your mom had a building or something, right?
Yes.
Tell us
where. That's how
let's
it
go
started.
all the way back.
Ooh, that's way back. So when I was little, my mother owned an apartment building in the south side of Chicago. I think we had like 7 or 8 units in this building. And my mother is from Puerto Rico, and English was her second language. So I was the one doing like all the translating and dealing with the tenants, collecting the rents, just managing the building from a very, very young age. And that's where my passion in real estate came about. And then as I got older, I bought my first apartment complex at the age of 18, which was a rental producing property. And from then on, it was just always a hobby. I've been in technology since actually before uni. So in high school, I was working at a help desk as an internship.
And that was before the internet, guys, right?
It was before the dot-com boom. Yeah. So the internet, oh God.
Yeah. I mean, okay, for me, the internet started 2000. Well, do you remember, what was it called? The millennium, there was this, everyone was terrified.
AOL.
1999, New Year's Eve to 2000.
It was before
the
that.
Millennium Bug or something. There was something. Everyone was terrified that the internet was just going to explode when the year turned to 2000. But yeah.
No, so it was
AOL,
before that.
Dial-up.
AOL dial-up with the modem. I was in high school when that came about. That's where my passion of technology like really kicked in. I was like, whoa, there's this thing called the internet and AOL, and you can dial in and you can see all these cool things.
You know the funny thing? I went, and I know you know Joel as well. And I went on his podcast, and he was talking about, I was trying to explain to him what hi-fi was. Do you remember? You know a hi-fi. And he was like, no, what's a hi-fi? He thought it was one of those old like music things with the discs. And so AOL dial-up for the younger generation. Please explain.
So
please explain how painful it was to go on the internet.
You had so in the very, very beginning, it was your telephone line that connected to the computer, which was, it was a modem, right?
Yeah.
So
and no one could be on the house phone at the same time, right?
Oh, wow, we're really dating ourselves back, Silvia. You're killing me here. So you would plug it into the computer, there would be a modem, and then, like you said, if someone tried to use the phone, it would interrupt. And by the way, it wasn't instant like today. It would take like 5 minutes to dial in, and you hear like all these noises, and then finally you see there was an hourglass, and you see the connection, and like you're in.
And there was nothing to be into, by the way. It was just like Messenger, where you're chatting to your friends, saying that's where we started all that BRB, be right back. You know, and LOL. That's where LOL started. Okay.
Yes, way back in the day. So that's where my passion for technology started. And so I've been in technology since I was 18. I started my first my first technology consulting company at 18 when I was in uni. Wow. And this was during right at the beginning of the dot-com boom. And I rode that wave with Microsoft and Sun Microsystems. And that's how it all started.
And then after that, you came to Dubai.
So yes, I lived in Las Vegas for 8 years. So in technology, I was in it for about 10 years, traveling all across the US, living in hotels and in airplanes. And I just had enough. I needed a break. So I moved to Las Vegas, and I decided to get my real estate license because I was buying a lot of property at that time, flipping it. And I just wanted the license just for the education part of it. And then I decided to get into real estate. I took a break from technology, got into real estate, loved it. And after my first year, that's when I got into the top 2% of real estate sales. Then I opened up my own brokerage. Then from there, in 2006, I moved to Dubai.
With a job or without a job?
Without a job.
Okay.
Yeah, so I moved here, and this is where prop tech came into play. I was looking for an apartment, and at that point, Property Finder was a magazine. Bayou did not exist, and Dubizzle was a horizontal where you can buy furniture, cars, and you can find places to live. So there was no comparable data. There was zero data. So I was looking for an apartment, very painful. This is where supply was very low, demand was very high before the financial crash here, because there was a year lag from the US to here. And it was very eye-opening for me. And this is where I saw that there wasn't any real estate data, open data in the market. And this is where I made a mission to bring the real estate data here. And that's where I started working on the various B2B real estate data platforms like Property Monitor, which was the first one that I started, and then Data Finder, and then working with Dubai Land Department.
Okay, so that must put you in a really good position to make your own real estate decisions.
Absolutely. I mean, for me, as I said, when I first came, it was like you took a very vital point out of real estate for me by not having that data, because in the US we had that data. So when I came here, I was blind. I didn't know what a property was worth. I didn't know how much I should be paying for rent. I didn't know anything as a consumer, and that really left me in a vulnerable state, not having data. And that's where it led me to said, okay, fine, we need to bring it here. This is how we can bring it, and that's
so
the
you.
story.
I mean, it's you've kind of done it backwards. Like I was employed all my career to date until last year when I went into entrepreneurship, and you started entrepreneurially, and then went into a long career history, like employment history, and now you're back to entrepreneurship. Can you just tell us? Because sometimes, you know, people, especially I think the next generation, are very entrepreneurial very early on. Whereas our generation, maybe we kind of, you know, we want to wait until we've got a few things settled before we take that leap.
So I was always an entrepreneur by heart ever since a very young age. As I said, I started my first consulting company when I was 18 in uni. And I led that all the way through. And then in Vegas, I started my own real estate brokerage. Then I came to Dubai. And it was in Dubai that I became an employee for the first time. And why? Probably because at that time in Dubai, I didn't really know how to start my own entity and where it should be positioned and how it should be positioned. I knew that I wanted to bring real estate data to the market. I knew how to bring it by working with the government. However, I needed that private entity to assist, and that's when I started working as an employee for the various different companies here. Then it wasn't until last year I took a sabbatical. I went to the U.S. and had to take care of a few things around the world, actually. Then I was consulting for the Saudi government. So that's when I went back into my entrepreneur and had my own consulting firm. Then when I came back to Dubai, there was many different forces, and we talked about this like a month ago about manifestation, that kind of pulled me together into doing what I'm doing today, which is the digital conveyancing and escrow at RealTrust as a founder. And that was brought due to many gaps and pain points in the market, as well as continuing that digital transformation within the Dubai real estate landscape, and bringing a service that doesn't really exist here today.
So I don't want to gloss over your achievements, but you're a pretty big deal when it comes to Dubai real estate. Can you just give us some kind of, you are. So can you just give us some headlines? Like you were at Property Monitor, Property Finder, like these big tech giants. And what did you build, launch? Just give us some
So at
headlines.
Property Monitor, we started, at Cavendish Maxwell, we started Property Monitor, which is a B2B real estate data platform. Then from there, I went to Property Finder, where we started Data Finder, which is a B2B real estate data platform for real estate agents, as well as the partnership with the Dubai Land Department to bring Muasher, which is the first real estate index in the city of Dubai. In addition, we also worked on the Open Data platform, the Open Data API, while at Property Finder with Dubai Land Department, which brought that to the market, where others benefited from it, like Bayut, DXB Interact, and a few other entities. So those were the initiatives while I was in the private sector working with the Dubai Land Department.
And then you dipped your toes into brokerage.
Yes. So after Property Finder, I went to Allsup and Allsup, which is the largest real estate brokerage here in the U.A.E.
Yeah, we had Lewis on the show a couple of episodes ago.
Lewis and Carl are great. Where I helped them with their digital transformation. Obviously, such a large brokerage, so many different services, and they're very tech advanced and they're very tech savvy, and they always had that in their mind and they wanted to bring it forward in the brokerage. So I helped them. I was there for about a year. And then after that is when I did my sabbatical.
Okay. And then Saudi.
Then I was advising for the Saudi government, for the PIF entities, to help them. Basically what I did here in Dubai there.
Right. Which is the next big thing, perhaps. Might take a while, but...
Yes, it will definitely, in Saudi, it will definitely take a while. There's a lot of... the good thing is they don't have the legacies. Even though Dubai technically didn't have the legacy issues that you have, for example, in the US or Europe, they have in Saudi less of it.
Right.
However, there's still a lot that needs to be done in Saudi, and they're working through it.
Okay. So as a prop tech, and one question I always ask prop tech founders, What problem are you solving for with RealTrust?
So with RealTrust, I wanted to solve a few gaps and pain points. Number one, conveyancing is a very old school kind of process. It's sales progression.
Okay. So because people might not understand I hope anyone watching this show understands what conveyancing is, but can you just explain what conveyancing is?
So conveyancing basically is the legal process within a real estate transaction from the beginning to the end. So after the buyer and seller sign Form F, conveyancing then takes over and handles all of the legalities, the paperwork, if there's mortgages involved, discharging the mortgage, if there's a new mortgage, getting the new mortgage on board, dealing with the developers, and then going all the way to the very end to the registration trustee.
Because it is, not closing, sorry, completion. So it is sales progression. A nice term for sales progression. But everywhere else, like in the UK, it is a proper procedure handled by lawyers.
Yes.
Representing each side.
Yes.
Why is that? And I'm sure it's the same in the US.
So in the US, depending on the state, it's one of the two. It's either lawyers or it's a title and escrow company. Right. And the reason being why it is like that in the UK as well as Australia, Europe in general, you have notaries, and then in the US, title and escrow, is because you need to have that neutral third party not involved in the deal, which is what we have brought into the market as well.
So for where we're at now here, you've got agents effectively acting as conveyancers, right? If they don't work in a big boutique agency or a big agency that has an in-house conveyancing department or sales progression team, a lot of the transaction, do you know the data on how many transactions are handled by the agents?
No.
Take a guess.
No.
Wouldn't want to guess?
No.
Do you think it's a majority handled progressed by the agents themselves?
No. So typically within the larger brokerages, they have their sales progression conveyancing teams. You have the smaller brokerages where the agents are involved in it, but usually there's like an admin in the company that takes it over. However, the challenges that these agents and agencies have is that they're not only representing themselves, they're representing the buyer or the seller, or sometimes both. Right. So it's very difficult to represent the buyer, the seller, and yourself at the same time and have your fiduciary duties basically in check. And a lot of issues have come about in those scenarios that I have personally seen, I personally have involved in, I know others that have been involved in. So this is why in other countries like US, Europe, and Australia, it is mandated that it has to be a neutral third party, not involved in the deal, so that all the parties' best interests are at hand. So this is what we're doing at RealTrust. We are a neutral third party, digital conveyancing. So that was one of the gaps and the pain points that we're solving. So we have digitized the entire experience for the buyer and the seller from the very beginning to the end. There's a lot of work in process. There's a lot of partners that we still need to get on board, working with the government, working with various other entities. But this is the process that we're in right now. Right now, it is fully digitized for our clients, and we still have phase 2, 3, and so forth to go on. Okay. Then the other one is escrow services. Now, this is a very interesting topic because escrow as a concept does not exist here. You cannot get licensing. The license does not exist here. So the way and how I got involved in this, or the thought process for this.
We're going to have to take it back. You're going to have to explain what it is, because people may not understand what escrow. They might understand escrow accounts for an off-plan developer.
So that's how I got into escrow services is a lot of my network, foreign investors, were looking to invest here in Dubai, and they were asking me, how do I send my funds over? What is the process? How do you do title and escrow? Is there a notary? Is there a lawyer? And at that point, I was just thinking, no, and no. This was a problem. This was a very big problem. Then when I started to do my due diligence and my research and my interviews before launching a digital conveyancing and escrow company, I realized that escrow as a concept did not exist. What is escrow? And I'm not talking about developer escrow for off-plan. I'm talking about escrow when you're buying a secondary resale property here in Dubai. It's an account where a foreign investor or someone who does not have a U.A.E bank account sends their funds to facilitate the transaction. Right. In other mature real estate markets, it is a neutral third-party account of a bank that is managed by a neutral third party. Here, that does not technically really exists legally or regulated.
So what's the risk? What's the worst case scenario?
Depending on, today, before RealTrust, depending on the option that you choose, the risk can be very low, could be very high. When I was doing my interviews and my due diligence in the market, I found funds that were taking the investor money and converting it into gold and selling it as a commodity and producing manager's checks. Very creative. I found individuals who knew someone at the bank that was taking the money and then producing manager's check from there. Very high risk because this person can run away. I found real estate brokerages that were creating diversion companies to accept these funds and produce manager's check. So high risk as well.
This is an issue for foreign investors bringing money in.
Absolutely.
So someone who doesn't have an account here, wants to buy a property here, how do they convert their cash from the US, from Italy, wherever it may be, to Dubai to produce a manager's check to go to transfer office?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is another pain point because a manager's check must get produced. That's the only form of payment the registration trustee will take, as well as the banks. So in order to produce this manager's check, this is where we're seeing a lot of these creative concepts come about, as I just mentioned before. You have also the foreign exchange companies that have various different ways of accepting the cash, doing the interbank exchange, and then producing manager's check via third parties.
Right.
So as I was going through the due diligence, and obviously this took months because I knew that if I was going to start a digital conveyancing and escrow company, I need to choose the routes that are fully protected, fully regulated, fully licensed, so that my clients are 100% protected, because this is my name and my reputation at stake. So I did. I found two options. So two options, and they're two very different options that I can give to my clients until the licensing is available. Because as I said, the licensing for escrow does not exist. It does not exist in DIFC. It does not exist in ADGM. So that is also something that I'm working on as well.
Okay. Right. So problems that you're solving for, going back to conveyancing, what are the, if you don't have a proper conveyancing process or person or service provider, what are the potential problems you could face as an agent, as a buyer, as a seller?
So I can give you a few real life examples. So recently, actually, there was 2 instances in the last few months where the real estate agents did not get their commissions. Why? Because they were doing the conveyancing in-house. And because in-house conveyancing, to ask your client, because they're also taking care of the client, for the commission check up front before it gets transferred is a little bit touchy for them. And it is a conflict of interest. Absolutely. You're representing the buyer, the seller, yourself, your agent. It's not possible, which is why in a lot of the mature real estate markets, dual agency is not allowed, where you represent both the buyer and the seller. So there have been a few instances actually throughout my time here in Dubai, but recently I've heard of 2 colleagues where this has happened.
We had one in, we're in a WhatsApp group. One of the agency leaders, I won't mention who, told us a story about another well-known agency leader, which we don't know who it is, but they closed a deal with one of her agents to sell their own property, and they didn't pay the commission. So that is someone, a leader in the industry, not paying commission because there was nobody handling this process, I guess.
Yes, so it's because the commission checks are not collected before transfer. We make sure, so in our digital conveyancing and escrow company, we do things differently. I'm trying to do the title and escrow as it's done in the US, or notary or lawyer as it's done in Europe. So we are collecting all of the fees, including the agent commissions, before transfer.
Right. Which, if it's done in-house, if it's done elsewhere, what typically happens?
It's not collected. Yeah.
You just, maybe you'll get it at the transfer at the trustee's office, right?
So the buyer or the seller is supposed to bring the check to the registration trustee transfer office, and they don't have to. There's nothing legally really binding them other than Form F. However, if you take it to court, you're paying your lawyer fees at the end of the day.
And the trustee is not going to stop the transfer from happening because the commission check wasn't there.
They're
or
not
whatever.
involved.
So this is super important from an agent's perspective.
An agency, yes.
Who's paying?
Who's paying?
For conveyancing services.
So typically today, conveyancing is either paid by the buyer, the seller, or both parties. It's become a lot more part of the real estate process, so more customary for both sides to pay.
Okay.
For us in the digital conveyancing and escrow, it depends on who comes to us. If it's the buyer that comes to us, if it's the seller, or if it's the agent, then it's split between the buyer and the seller.
Okay. And what's in it for the buyer and what's in it for the seller?
So for the buyer and the seller, you are completely protected on your rights throughout the entire process. So we are not part of the deal. We are not commission driven. We are driven to make sure that the buyer and the seller's best interests are at hand, and that we are conveyancing the process to the very end legally, with all the T's crossed and all the I's dotted. So we make sure, even at the Form F stage, if there needs to be addendum done to clarify the rights and responsibilities for both the buyer and the seller.
You can get involved in that.
We do.
Okay, so you want to know about the deal as it's been closed before the Form F, right?
It's nice to. So it's nice that we are involved. So in RealTrust, we have an in-house lawyer. She's director of operations and legal, so she's a lawyer.
She's also been on the show.
She has been.
Majdel, episode
Majdel.
7, maybe. She was
Yes.
season 1.
So she's a lawyer in the U.S.
She knows her
and
stuff.
She definitely does. She's been in the real estate landscape here since she's arrived a little bit more than 10 years ago. So she's part of the team, and she makes sure that all of the forms, contracts, addendums are in place. So we would like to get involved during the Form F conversation, just to make sure that all the parties are properly protected. But if not, we have an addendum after the fact where we can get involved.
Okay. And if, again, going back to agents and the way they think, and there might be a reluctance to lose control of the deal.
Absolutely.
Right?
That's a big issue.
And, how do I know you're not going to mess it with all your dotting I's and crossing T's? Are you going to mess up this deal for me?
So I can give you, so there's many examples of where the agencies have done it in-house. They're representing both the buyer and the seller, and today they're in court because they messed up.
Right. What kind of mess ups? Give us some mess up examples.
There's so many. Yeah. So where they were protecting the buyer more than the seller, adding clauses for the buyer to get the mortgage. The seller didn't have options to look at other offers. Where the MOU wasn't signed properly. Where there was minors involved in signing them. So I can give you so many examples, real life examples, where because they wanted to have full control and they did it in house, and they have to do everything that they can just to complete it to get that commission. A lot of them have gone to court because of issues, and it's also very overhead intensive for the brokerages because they have to hire the team, they have to hire the admins, they have the headaches at the end of the day. Really, it's this is where we come in and we take that burden off of the brokerages and we alleviate that from them. And we have a full team in-house of conveyancers, as well as a director of conveyancing, Yvonne, who's been in the market for over 14 years now. We have Majdel, who's handling operations and legal. I took my husband out of retirement. He's handling
Dragged him out.
operations and finance. So it's a full team, and we're growing rapidly, and we're seeing that a lot of people in the market are recognizing this and coming to us, including prop techs who need this as part of their services, who are catering to the buyer and the sellers as well.
And what about, are you taking the AML risk as well? Anti-money laundering?
To.
Right.
Yes. We have to do full KYC, full AML.
So they can pass this over to you as well, because at the moment everyone has to have a compliance officer in-house. They have to do all the KYC. So they can just leave it all to you.
Everything. Yes, and we take care of it.
All digitized.
Fully digitized, so the client gets access to their own client portal, the buyer and the seller. They get to see where the transaction is at any given time. It's in real time. If they avail other services. So for our clients, we offer every service possible for the real estate transaction. So whether they want to create a property holding company to secure their assets, a foundation, they need to prepare wills to protect their assets, we help them with everything. So it's also that one-stop shop, and it gives the full service to the clients, which is a benefit to the agency because it shows the confidence to the agents from their clients.
So what other services have you woven in?
So as I said, there's we help create property holding companies, whether they're offshore or free zone, foundations, whether they're in DIFC, ADGM, or RAC. We also help with will preparation. Obviously, power of attorney is a big part of it. Escrow services, that's our other main service line for foreign investors.
Are you able to act as power of attorney for clients?
Yes,
okay.
We can, because we're not part of the deal. Even though you do still see a lot of agencies and agents act as power of attorney being part of the deal, which technically you're not supposed to, but that law hasn't really been followed over the years.
You're operational, ready to go.
Yes.
How can listeners find you?
So our website, RealTrustUAE.com. We're on all the social channels, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. So yeah, right now it's just really been word of mouth, just from my own personal network, and also handling the foreign investors from my network in the U.S. as well as Europe.
Well, let's talk about them. So what challenges are they facing that you're solving for?
So that's been a challenge for quite a bit, which kind of got me also involved into what I'm doing today. So I have a very strong network from Las Vegas, from the West Coast, from when I was brokering there, as well as my Harvard network. So Harvard alumni like to stick to each other, and we have our WhatsApp groups, and we're always constantly supporting each other and going to each other for advice. So they would come to me whenever they wanted to invest into this part of the world, specifically Dubai.
That's some good leads right there, the Harvard alumni leads.
And I was passing like maybe 20 good leads a month to various different agents. And what I found is that my network wasn't very necessarily happy with the results that they were getting. They weren't happy with the processes. They weren't happy with the fact that there was no escrow title, or how are they going to transfer their funds. It was very convoluted. It was not clear. So this is where I said, okay, I need to step in and service them, because there's an opportunity here. And that's what I started to do as well. And this includes clients in Europe from specifically Italy. My husband's Italian. So there's a strong network and connection there.
Do you speak Italian? Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Spanish, not Italian. So it's just, filling in those gaps and pain points, and just trying to help them. Yeah,
because I had another American on the show a couple of episodes ago, and she was explaining how Americans are super nervous, nervous about investing in the Middle East. So how are you finding that conversation?
So they become a lot more open to it recently over the last few years. I don't know if you've noticed, but when you walk around Dubai, you hear a lot more Americans around you. Before I would hear none, but now it's a lot more often. You have a lot of Americans who have backgrounds from this part of the world. And then you have the foreign investors who are more open and have more of an appetite to invest overseas. And these are really the ones that I cater to. And it's purely educational. Right. And this is what I've done. So I have webinars. I will be doing some roadshows in the US, just educating people about investing in Dubai, why they should invest in Dubai, the legalities of investing in Dubai. Majda will be joining me on these roadshows, and how, where. And really, it's purely education. Yeah. It's not ads. It's not anything that you see here on how people advertise Dubai. It's not like that in the US. It's a very different market and very different way of speaking to them.
And speaking of education and your Harvard alumni, it's quite an interesting topic I want to open up, because and this has come up quite a few times in recent episodes where we're talking about education levels. So myself, Lewis Alsop, Daniel Hadi, we all either didn't go to university or dropped out. And it's kind of, real estate is like a default industry for dropouts. And I didn't want to appear to be encouraging people not to go to university. But then I've got you and Zaina Khoury, for example, who are actually heavily investing in higher education. So not only did you go to university, you've also continuous education. how did that come about? Talk to us about what do you get to a stage where it's like, I don't know enough and I need to go back to university? What happened?
No, I think so. For me, it was always drilled in my head at a very young age that education is going to get you to succeed and get you into higher places. And it was done by my father. So my father was an academic. He came from a family of academics. He is Lithuanian, and I went to Lithuanian school every day, as well as full day on Saturdays. So I had Lithuanian homework, American English homework. And I remember sitting at the kitchen table till like midnight at the age of 5, 6 years old, very young, with my dad just pounding me. It was really, actually, now that I think about it, probably a little traumatic at that time, but I thank him every single day for doing it, because he drilled and instilled this sense of education in me that's what got me to where I'm at today. He passed away when I was very young. So I grew up in the south side of Chicago in a very economically depressed environment, the ghetto.
What?
The ghetto.
Yes, just the ghetto, yeah.
And
economically depressed.
Yeah. So, and my mom was working 3 jobs at that time. She was like a maid. She was working in a restaurant and, doing all these things just to pay for my schooling. I went to a private school. And I remember my dad just drilling that into my head, and I just was into my studies and homework, and I ignored my surroundings. And then I got into university. So I did very well on my ACTs. I got a 34 out of 36, 36 being a perfect score, and I got a full scholarship to university. Then from there, and then my entrepreneurial spirit, obviously kicked in. I graduated, and then I just got out of my environment and just grew from there. As an adult, I always wanted to do my postgraduate and my executive studies. I just didn't know where or in what. And Harvard came at a perfect time. It was recommended to me. I was recommended to Harvard for their specific program. It was the Advanced Management Development Program with the Harvard Business School, as well as the Harvard School of Design. So it was a specialty in real estate. And it just all came together. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to dedicate 2 years of my life, travel back and forth to the US to get this done. It was probably the hardest thing I think I've ever done as an adult. I remember, sitting in the hotel room, just crying my eyes. I was like, I can't do this. What, this is way over my head.
Is it the volume or the Is it the volume of work or the complexity?
The volume, complexity, the competition, which was very good, like very healthy competition within the classmates. But everyone helped each other, and it was the best experience of my adulthood. And I would do it over and over again. And I learned so much. And I really became disciplined on the financial side of things, which is something that I didn't really care for. Not data. I'm really good on the data side, but like the finances.
Business kind of finances.
Yeah. Okay. So like putting financials together. And then it just forced me to do that. And now I do that very well. And it was just an amazing experience. Definitely recommend it.
Okay. I mean, I'll happily stick with my YouTube university. Just Google search everything that I need to. Okay, let's go back to PropTech. You've already explained how you're weaving in your PropTech experience and leveraging technology to provide buyers, sellers, and agents and agencies a better service. And this is also an initiative by DLD, and you and I were both at the recent launch of REES, which is, Real Estate Evolution Space. So there's a new initiative by Dubai Land Department to kind of be the Silicon Valley of PropTech. Can you tell us a bit about that initiative and how heavily involved you're going to be, or what's your kind of predictions?
So REES is an initiative from the Dubai Land Department, and it is basically a PropTech network and a sandbox. So what they did for the first event is they brought back a lot of the old school pioneers that group that I'm a part
Yeah,
of.
it was like kind of, I haven't seen you for ages.
Exactly. It was amazing.
Yeah.
The turnout was incredible, as well as the newcomers into the market from the foreign markets.
Yeah.
And it was nice to see what everyone is working on currently, and the new initiatives and technologies that are coming to the market, and how the Dubai Land Department is supporting them. And that is amazing, that His Excellency Marwan is really behind and really pushing along with Dr. Mahmoud Al-Barai. So it was, and they're also created a sandbox, so where people can come together, learn, and this is that networking part that we never really had. Right. We all kind of did it ourselves in separate different groups, but now we're all together, and I'm really looking forward to it.
And the sandbox has another objective as well, to kind of, if there's any regulatory hurdles that prop techs are experiencing, they're supposed to kind of bring that into the sandbox and see if something can be done to solve it. I probably haven't explained that very well, but
yes, that's actually a very good explanation. And this is kind of what happened with the Open Data Initiative in Washer. So there wasn't any regulations for the open data, to bring the open data to the market, and this is what I worked on with the Dubai Land Department while I was a property finder, and they created the various different regulations for it to bring it to the market. So that sandbox, even though it wasn't officially a sandbox, was there, and it was something that they supported. But now they've openly opened it up for everyone to come in and to be a part of. But with that said, it's not easy. If you have an idea, prop tech, and you want to bring it to the market, make sure you have a very good case study. Make sure that you have you've done your research, you've done your due diligence, you know the market very, very well, and that you, before approaching the government, because honestly, you have one shot and you have their attention for a little bit during that one time, and either you're going to attract them or you're not. So you have to be very well prepared as well.
And is there anything that you're specifically excited about in the prop tech space, apart from, of course, RealTrust? Any initiatives or any prop techs that you're keeping an eye on?
Digital transformation. Absolutely.
Tell us more.
RealTrust.
Apart from RealTrust.
It's really digitizing the current processes that are in place to set Dubai apart from the rest of the world. And we have the advantage here where we don't have those legacy systems like the other parts of the world, where we can accomplish it. It involves prop tech as well as fintech.
And AI? How do you feel about AI?
Let's get the basics first.
Okay.
Let's get the basics first. Let's get that done. Let's get the digitization, the digital transformation. Yeah, AI has been there for 10, 15, 20 years. I've been working with AI for a very long time. It wasn't as fancy as it was back then.
It wasn't a buzzword.
It's always, it's a part of a lot of technologies that we have today that we take that we take granted for. So I don't like to really focus at AI as a component, because it's really ingrained into a lot of things that we're working on. It's a very important part of it, but really, let's get the foundations, let's get the basics done, and then go from there.
Okay. And finally, what advice would you give to real estate professionals thinking about getting into the industry, or already in the industry for the last, just stepped into it maybe the last couple of years?
Know your market, do your research, know the data, pick an area. Don't specialize in all of Dubai. Specialize in Dubai Marina and maybe a few buildings in Dubai Marina, not all of Dubai Marina. And focus
niche down.
Yeah, and focus and pick your niche market. Pick the type of sellers you want to work with, as well as the type of buyers you want to work with. Honestly, that's where I think that an agent today coming into the market can succeed.
Okay, all right. And is there anything else you'd like to say?
No.
Anything else you want to talk about?
No. Just stay tuned.
Any other tea?
Coming. No, a lot of tea. A lot of tea coming soon, but just stay tuned.
Okay. Follow her on Instagram. She posts the tea stories regularly. Okay, thank you very much for joining us on the premiere of season 4 Golden Nuggets. Lynnette, you've been lovely. Thank you for telling us all about your new venture. We wish you all the best of luck.
Thank you, Silvia.
And like, share, and subscribe.